In the year 1598, just before a battle that would decide many lives, a master called his best student forward. The camp was quiet. The air felt heavy, like it knew what was coming. The master looked at the young warrior for a long moment before speaking. "Renjiro," he said calmly, "your sword work is flawless. Your form is clean. Your timing is sharp." Renjiro bowed, proud but respectful. "Tell me this," the master continued. "How long can you fight at full strength?" Renjiro did not hesitate. "As long as I must, master. My technique will carry me through." The master slowly shook his head. "No," he said. "You will last only until your hands can no longer hold your sword, until your arms refuse to rise, until your body turns against your will. That is when you will fall." Renjiro was surprised. He had trained for years. Every strike was perfect. Every movement was practiced. He believed skill was the answer to everything. The master's words sounded wrong to him. "My technique has never failed me," Renjiro said. "Technique does not decide how long you last," the master replied. "Your body does." Renjiro said nothing. He believed discipline and form were enough. Strength, he had been taught, was secondary. Endurance was rarely discussed. Battles, after all, were thought to be short. The master looked away as if already seeing the future. 11 hours from the first clash," he said quietly, "you will meet a man who is less skilled than you. His movements will be rough. His form will be poor. And you will lose." Renjiro felt a tightness in his chest. "Because I make a mistake." "No," the master said. "Your technique will remain beautiful. You will lose because your hands will fail you. Your grip will open. Your arms will weaken. And when your body gives up, your skill will no longer matter." The master's voice stayed calm, but his words were heavy. "Understand this," he continued. "Perfect technique inside an unprepared body is just a graceful way to be defeated." Renjiro listened, but he did not truly hear. He had spent years polishing his movements. No one had ever warned him that the body itself could be the deciding weapon. The master turned to leave. "When the fight lasts longer than your strength," he said, "the body always makes the final choice." Renjiro stood alone, confident in his training, unaware that the question he had just answered had already sealed his fate. Renjiro was only 23 years old, yet many believed he was already beyond his generation. He had trained for 7 years without missing a season. Every morning began before sunrise. Every evening ended with careful review. His discipline was unquestioned. His focus never drifted. In the dojo, his movements looked effortless. Each strike followed the correct line. Each step landed in the right place. His balance never wavered. Older students watched him with quiet frustration. Younger ones watched with awe. When Renjiro practiced, mistakes seemed to disappear. He did not train blindly. His mind was as sharp as his blade. He studied strategy late into the night. He could quote the Book of Five Rings without pause. He recited passages from the Hagakure as easily as breathing. War, timing, distance, intent. He understood these ideas long before most warriors his age. His master often praised him. "Your understanding is rare," Yamada-sensei would say. "Most men learn with their bodies first. You learn with your mind." And Renjiro believed that was enough. What no one noticed was what happened after time passed. After 30 minutes of training, his hands began to ache. After an hour, his shoulders burned. After 2 hours, his arms felt heavy, slow, unwilling. He needed rest sooner than others, but no one questioned it. Training sessions were not meant to last long. The dojo valued elegance. Forms were repeated. Philosophy was discussed. Strength work was treated as something crude. Building grip strength, hardening the body, pushing past physical limits. These things were rarely taught. "Physical power is for peasants," Yamada-sensei often said. "A samurai wins through precision, not brute force." Renjiro accepted this fully. His body was clean and healthy, but it was soft. It was shaped for demonstration, not survival. He had never fought longer than 10 minutes at full effort. He had never learned what happened when pain stopped being sharp and became constant. He had never reached the point where the body begins to shut down. In the calm safety of the dojo, none of this seemed important. Technique ruled everything. Fatigue was an afterthought. Then one afternoon, a messenger arrived, breathless and urgent. A lord was gathering forces. All warriors of fighting age were ordered to report. The illusion shattered. War was no longer an idea. It was coming. The dojo had always believed it held the truth. For decades, its teachings were passed down without question. Technique came first. Strategy followed. The body was expected to obey, no matter its limits. Strength training was seen as unnecessary, even embarrassing. Lifting heavy objects, hardening the hands, building endurance. These practices were viewed as crude labor, not worthy of refined warriors. A samurai defeats his enemy with skill, Yamada-sensei often said, not with raw power. No one challenged this idea. It sounded wise. It felt clean. And inside the dojo, it appeared correct. Matches were short. Sparring rarely lasted more than a few minutes. In that setting, perfect form always won. What the dojo never faced was time. They did not train for battles that stretched beyond comfort. They did not prepare for hours of gripping steel, of lifting tired arms again and again. They did not test what happened when breath became shallow and muscles stopped responding. Renjiro had never seen a real fight unfold slowly. He had never watched technique fade as exhaustion grew. He had never seen a skilled warrior lose simply because his body could no longer keep up. In the dojo, fatigue was treated as failure. When students grew tired, practice stopped. Rest was given. There was no training beyond that point. No one asked what came next. The belief was simple and comforting. If technique is perfect, the body will follow. But that belief only holds when the fight ends quickly. Real battles do not end quickly. When two trained warriors meet and neither falls in the first moments, something else begins to decide the outcome. It is not precision. It is not knowledge. It is not even courage. It is endurance. Renjiro had never been pushed to discover this. His training was complete in theory, but incomplete in reality. He knew how to strike. He knew when to move. He knew where to place his blade. What he did not know was how long he could keep doing it. When the messenger spoke of marching orders and battle lines, the dojo's ideas were no longer safe. War does not respect philosophy. It tests only what can last. And Renjiro, without realizing it, was about to step into a test he had never trained for. The night before the battle, the camp refused to sleep. Fires burned low. Armor clinked softly as men shifted in place. The air smelled of oil, steel, and nervous breath. Renjiro lay awake, staring into the dark, his thoughts restless and unsettled. He rose and walked through the camp, passing groups of warriors checking blades, whispering prayers, or sitting in silence. Everyone looked tense but ready. This was what they had trained for, or so they believed. At the edge of the camp, Renjiro noticed something strange. In a small clearing, a handful of samurai were moving with slow, heavy purpose. One swung a massive iron club in wide, controlled arcs. Another twisted a stone weight attached to a wooden handle, his forearms swollen and strained. A third struck a wooden post again and again, each blow dull and solid, like a drumbeat. This was not formal practice. There were no elegant stances, no refined movements. It looked harsh, almost punishing. Renjiro stopped and watched. An older warrior noticed him standing there. His hair was streaked with gray. His posture was relaxed, but solid, like a tree that had weathered many storms. "First campaign?" the man asked. "Yes," Renjiro answered. The veteran gave a rough smile. "I thought so." Renjiro hesitated. "These exercises, we don't train like this in my dojo." The older warrior let out a short laugh. "Then your dojo hasn't seen much real fighting." He stepped closer. "Tell me something," he said. "How long can you swing your sword at full power?" Renjiro thought carefully. Our sessions usually last an hour, sometimes 2. And tomorrow? The veteran asked. How long do you think the battle will last? Renjiro frowned. I don't know. Hours, maybe longer. The veteran nodded. That's the right answer. He gestured back toward the men training. In the first hour, everyone looks skilled. In the second, form begins to slip. By the third hour, bodies start failing. That's when people die, not because they forgot technique, but because their arms stopped working. Renjiro felt a quiet tension rise in his chest. The veteran's eyes were steady. Skill decides the early moments, he said. Endurance decides who's still standing when those moments pass. Renjiro said nothing. The debate was over. The truth was about to be shown, not explained. The veteran did not explain Hōjō Undō with words. He explained it with weight. He handed Renjiro a Chi-ishi, a stone hammer, rough and uneven, its handle worn smooth by years of use. It was heavier than it looked. Renjiro lifted it confidently, feeling the familiar balance of leverage and control. Swing it, the veteran said. Renjiro did. Slow, clean arcs. His technique was perfect. The stone cut through the air without wobble. Again. Minutes passed. Then more. The stone began to pull. Not from the shoulders, but from the hands. Renjiro adjusted his grip. Subtle. Invisible. Still controlled. Again. The handle started to burn. Fingers stiffened. Forearms tightened like iron bands. Renjiro's breathing changed. The veteran watched silently. When the Chi-ishi finally slipped, it wasn't dramatic. There was no collapse. No cry. Just a sudden loss of obedience, as if Renjiro's hands had betrayed him without warning. The stone struck the ground. Renjiro stared at his fingers. They were shaking. The veteran nodded. That's the truth. Next came the Tetsubo, a heavy iron club. Thick. Merciless. Renjiro lifted it once. Twice. The third time his wrists faltered. His elbows followed. No technique fixes that, the veteran said. When the grip fails, the body decides for you. At the Makiwara, Renjiro struck until his knuckles throbbed and his shoulders screamed. His form dissolved, not from ignorance, but from fatigue. Every correction cost effort. Every strike demanded more than the last. This is Hojo Undo, the veteran said quietly. Not strength for showing off. Strength for survival. Renjiro lowered his hands. His confidence felt thinner now, strained, tested. A weak body, the veteran continued, turns perfect technique into theory. And theory gets you killed. The realization hit harder than the training. This wasn't extra practice. It was the foundation he had been missing. A horn sounded in the distance. The night was over. There was no more time to learn. The fighting began at dawn. Renjiro moved as he always had, precise, calm, untouched by panic. The first opponent rushed him with noise and force. Renjiro stepped aside, redirected the strike, and ended it cleanly. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Another followed. Then another. Each encounter ended the same way. A clean entry. Perfect timing. Efficient control. His training worked exactly as promised. Around him, others struggled. Movements were wild. Breathing was loud. Mistakes piled up fast. Renjiro stayed composed. Adrenaline filled the gaps. It sharpened his senses. It muted the soreness in his hands and the dull ache in his forearms. His grip felt solid again. His body listened. For a while, the veteran's warnings seemed distant, almost exaggerated. Renjiro began to trust the rhythm. Strike. Reset. Move. He counted victories without meaning to. Each one reinforced the belief that skill was enough. But time kept moving. Minutes stretched into hours. Between fights, Renjiro noticed his breathing no longer settled quickly. His chest stayed tight. His fingers tingled when he opened and closed them. Still, when the next opponent came, technique answered the call. He blocked, redirected, countered, It worked, but slower. The margins grew thinner. Movements that once felt effortless now required attention. He had to think about details that used to happen on their own. Sweat soaked his uniform. His forearms felt dense, like they were filling with sand. Another clash. Another clean finish. But when he stepped back, his hands trembled for a moment before steadying. Renjiro ignored it. The battlefield offered no pauses long enough to reflect. Noise swallowed thought. Motion demanded response. He stayed inside the work. Yet something subtle had changed. His grip tightened harder than necessary. His shoulders rose without him noticing. Each correction stole a little more energy than the last. Adrenaline kept him upright, but it couldn't restore what was draining away. Between encounters, he flexed his fingers again. The burn returned instantly. The technique was still there. The timing was still sharp, but the cost was rising. Renjiro didn't feel weak. Not yet. He felt taxed. And somewhere beneath the noise and movement, a quiet truth was forming, one he wasn't ready to face. The body was keeping score, and it was catching up. By the second hour, Renjiro felt a new weight pressing on him, not the enemy's strikes, but his own arms. Every lift of the sword burned from shoulder to fingertip. The smooth arcs he relied on became harder to maintain. Precision began to wobble. Timing slipped. Each opponent lasted longer than the last. Where he expected quick endings, fights dragged. The ones who should have fallen in moments now required several measured strikes. He moved deliberately, but even small corrections cost more energy than before. Around him, other warriors showed the difference between training and survival. Some moved with ease, almost slow-motion strength that hid their exertion. Their arms rose freely. Their strikes landed without tremor. They were calm, steady, and unshakable. Renjiro's hands shook as he gripped his sword. He tried to force smooth motion, but the weapon felt heavier. Blocks came a fraction too late. Counters were sluggish. Every movement required extra effort, as if his body resented his commands. He glanced across the battlefield. Some warriors were still moving efficiently, no faster, no flashier, but unstoppable. Each step, each swing, seemed effortless to an outsider, but he knew the truth. They had trained their bodies to endure this long. Their muscles, bones, and grip could carry them beyond what Renjiro could imagine. And then he saw him, an opponent clearly less skilled. His technique was crude. His strikes lacked polish. But his shoulders never burned. His arms didn't tremble. His grip stayed firm. He moved through combat like a man who had spent years building his body to last. Renjiro engaged him. Perfect counters were met with endurance. Each strike that should have ended the fight now met resistance. Blocks arrived slower. Responses came delayed. The difference was undeniable. Renjiro won, but it was laborious. Every swing cost double. Every motion required mental effort to override fatigue. The battlefield felt like it had compressed, leaving him small and suffocated. His chest heaved. Sweat ran down his back. Every nerve screamed for relief, yet the fight continued. The truth was no longer theoretical. Technique alone could not dictate the outcome. The body, the failing, burning, exhausted body, was now in control. Renjiro could still fight. Barely. But survival was no longer certain. And the next opponent, the one least skilled but unbreakable, was coming. By the fourth hour, Renjiro's world had narrowed to heavy arms and trembling legs. Every movement felt distant, disconnected. His shoulders burned with every lift. His hands no longer held the sword as he willed them. Each command from his mind slowed in execution. And Shigeru, a low-ranking foot soldier, stepped forward. His technique was crude, almost laughable compared to Renjiro's. Every strike was telegraphed, every stance imperfect. In a dojo setting, Renjiro would have ended him in seconds. But this was not a dojo. This was reality, and his body had reached its limit. Renjiro swung the overhead strike he had practiced thousands of times. In theory, it should have landed perfectly. In reality, his arms trembled mid-motion. The blade felt as if it were moving through water. His timing was off. His balance faltered. Every movement betrayed the mind that commanded it. The Ishiguro blocked easily. He sidestepped, struck again. Renjiro tried to react, but his limbs refused. Every counter was slower, weaker, fragmented. The precision he had relied on vanished under the weight of exhaustion. He fell, again and again. Each cut tore flesh and spirit, but not his pride. His mind screamed orders, sharp and precise, yet his body could not obey. The soldier standing over him was not more skilled. He was simply enduring when Renjiro could not. In the fading light, Renjiro realized the cruel truth. Death had not come from poor technique, ignorance, or lack of courage. It came from the one thing the dojo had dismissed, the body. A perfectly trained mind could not save a body that quits. A flawless technique was meaningless if the vessel delivering it failed. Renjiro died as he had trained, masterful in form, brilliant in thought, but defeated by the limitations of his flesh. And in that final moment, the lesson became clear. The most gifted student of 2 generations lost not to a stronger opponent, but to endurance he had never built. Technique without strength was theory without application. And that theory had just cost him everything. 3 days later, the news reached the dojo. Yamada-sensei sat alone in the quiet room, the report held loosely in his hands. Renjiro was dead, not in a glorious flurry of victories, not cutting through countless enemies, but struck down in the 4th hour by a soldier of lesser skill. His body had failed before his mind. For the first time in 30 years, the old master questioned everything he had taught. He had spent decades emphasizing technique, strategy, and mental discipline, believing the body would simply obey. Now, that belief lay shattered. He thought of Renjiro, the most talented student he had ever trained, the one whose skill had seemed unmatched, whose mind understood warfare far beyond his years. And yet, all that brilliance had been wasted because no one had prepared his body for what reality demanded. Yamada-sensei's hands trembled slightly. He had sent Renjiro into battle armed with knowledge, but in a body that could not endure. The weight of that truth pressed down on him heavier than any training tool. He admitted it silently, first to himself, then to the empty room. He had taught a lie. He had taught perfection of form without the foundation to make it survive. Technique alone was insufficient. Strategy alone was insufficient. A mind unmatched in wisdom could not carry a weak body through the trials of war. For 30 years, he had believed he was shaping warriors. But the battlefield had shown him differently. He had failed to prepare the essential: endurance, resilience, the raw strength of the body. The dojo's doctrines, once untouchable, now seemed hollow. What had been called dignity had been a dangerous illusion. What had been called refinement had been deadly neglect. Renjiro's death was not just a loss of a student, it was a mirror reflecting the cost of the master's choices. And with that realization came a quiet, heavy understanding. The lesson would have to be taught differently from now on. The story of failure now shifted toward a deeper truth, one that could not be ignored. Modern understanding confirms what the old warriors sensed instinctively. Renjiro's body failed not from lack of courage or skill, but from the limits of physiology. At the start, his muscles were full of energy, cells brimming with ATP. Nerve signals flowed smoothly, recruiting fibers with precision. Every strike, block, and parry worked because his body cooperated fully with his mind. But prolonged exertion depletes these reserves. As ATP ran low, his muscles could no longer contract with the same force. Waste products built up, slowing nerve signals and coordination. Movements that were automatic became deliberate. Technique faltered. This is neuromuscular fatigue, a physiological truth that spares no one, however skilled. Grip strength proved decisive. Research in combat sports confirms it. When the hands fail, the entire body is compromised. The weapon cannot be wielded. Defense becomes impossible. The Chi-ishi had trained more than muscle. It trained the nervous system to maintain grip under stress, delaying the moment when the body gives up. Bone density mattered too. Striking the Makiwara repeatedly caused micro-damage. The body responded by reinforcing bones. Wolff's Law in action: stress strengthened structure. Denser bones reduced fractures, transmitted force more efficiently, and allowed impact to be endured without breakdown. These principles were not new, but their application was ignored. Masters like Miyamoto Musashi and the Hagakure writers emphasized constant practice of both technique and conditioning. Hojo Undo was not punishment. It was survival science in action. Every swing, every twist, every strike had a purpose: to prepare the body to outlast exhaustion. Technique without a strong, conditioned body is theory. It cannot survive the prolonged demands of real combat. Neural pathways degrade under fatigue. Muscles refuse orders. Bones shatter without reinforcement. The mind may be perfect, but the body dictates what can actually happen. This understanding connects philosophy to practice. The lesson is clear: survival is a combination of body, mind, and training that respects both. Neglect one, and the cost is fatal. Renjiro had learned this too late. His story became proof that conditioning was not optional, it was fundamental. A month after Renjiro's death, Yamada-sensei called all the students together. The old master looked smaller, weighed down by the loss, the burden of truth heavy on his shoulders. "I have taught you incorrectly," he said, his voice firm. The room fell silent. Confused eyes searched for explanation. "For 30 years, I emphasized technique above all else. Mental discipline, strategy, philosophy. I told you conditioning was secondary, optional. Beneath a samurai's dignity. I was wrong." Renjiro died because of this lie. Not from poor skill, but from a body that quit while his spirit still fought. He gestured toward the courtyard. Chi-ishi stones, Tetsubo staffs, Makiwara posts, heavy rocks, all laid out like tools of revelation. From today, your bodies will be forged first. Your techniques will follow. Conditioning is the foundation. Taida, the veteran, stepped forward to demonstrate. Grip training with Chi-ishi, bone strengthening with Makiwara, shoulder endurance with Tetsubo, total body strength with stone carries. Every motion precise, every strike intentional. The students began their first lesson. At first, it was brutal. Forearms burned within 10 minutes of Chi-ishi twists. Knuckles swelled after 20 minutes of Makiwara strikes. Tetsubo swings left even the strongest students trembling. Stone carries tested every muscle and joint. There was no elegance, no flourish. Only raw, unrelenting work. One student, Kenji, approached after the first week, exhausted. "Master, my technique is worse. I can't execute properly." Yamada-sensei's eyes were cold. "Your technique hasn't worsened. Your body was always this weak. Now you feel it. Once your conditioning matches your skill, you will be dangerous." Students continued through pain, learning a new truth. Skill alone was insufficient. Only a body forged to endure allowed technique to matter. The dojo had shifted. Lessons now began with the forge, not the form. Hours passed. Muscles screamed. Hands throbbed. Minds resisted the relentless repetition. And yet, even in struggle, the seeds of transformation were planted. Every twist, every strike, every lift was a small step toward survival. The foundation was hard, corrective, and unforgiving, but necessary. Time would reveal the results, but already the students felt the change. The dojo was no longer a temple of elegant theory. It was a forge of warriors, and the first signs of transformation had begun. 3 months into the new regiment, the students' bodies were visibly different. Hands calloused, forearms thick, shoulders strong, endurance steadily rising. What had once felt impossible, long hours of training without collapse, was now becoming routine. Kenji faced a visiting samurai, older, technically refined, and clearly more experienced. The match began. At first, technique dominated. Every block precise, every strike calculated. But as minutes passed, fatigue started to show in the visitor. Movement slowed. Timing slipped. His defenses weakened. Kenji, conditioned through relentless Chi-ishi, Makiwara, Tetsubo, and stonework, remained steady. His arms, shoulders, and grip held firm. Even as minutes stretched into 23, his form, while less polished, was effective. Every strike landed with enough force to matter. Every defense held where it counted. By the end, the visiting samurai could barely lift his sword. His technique had collapsed under the weight of exhaustion. Kenji, though not flawless in form, still moved with consistent power and control. The victory was clear. Conditioning had tipped the scales. Afterward, the visitor asked quietly, "What changed?" Yamada-sensei answered simply, "We buried a student with perfect technique and a weak body. Now we build strength first, then skill. The second one wins battles." The students saw the truth in action. Skill could carry you only so far. Endurance, strength, and a body forged to endure determined who survived when the fight extended beyond the first hour. The dojo had transformed. Lessons once confined to theory and form now tested in reality. Every repetition, every painful twist of the Chi-ishi, every strike to the Makiwara, every heavy lift had contributed to survival. Kenji's victory wasn't about genius or talent. It was about preparation, persistence, and conditioning. The principle was now undeniable. A body forged through hardship allows technique to function under pressure. Imperfect form executed by a strong, enduring body beats flawless form in a body that fails. With that lesson proven, the students readied themselves for what came next, the ultimate test, where survival would demand everything they had learned. 1 year after Reniro's death, war returned. Kenji stood in formation, different from the student who had trained for form alone. His hands held the sword with relaxed authority. Shoulders felt loose, strong, capable. Legs planted firmly, ready to move. Every muscle had been tested, strengthened, and prepared. The horn sounded. Armies collided. Kenji moved with efficiency, each strike deliberate. Early skirmishes went smoothly. First enemies fell quickly. Adrenaline surged, but unlike before, fatigue did not control him. His conditioning allowed him to maintain focus and power when others slowed. Hour 2 began to separate the prepared from the unprepared. Warriors around him, skilled but weak in endurance, started to falter. Blocks arrived late. Strikes weakened. Breathing became heavy, movements sluggish. Kenji observed without panic, using the window his training had created. By hour 3, the time when Renjiro had died, Kenji remained alert and capable. His grip was steady, shoulders strong, arms precise. Technique was still effective because the body could follow through. One by one, opponents who were technically brilliant but unconditioned collapsed or fell out of the fight. Even a veteran samurai, older and highly skilled, could not sustain his form. Kenji engaged him. The match lasted minutes, tense and measured. Fatigue crept into the veteran's movements. Eventually, his sword dropped. Kenji could have struck a lethal blow, but he chose to continue. Survival, not glory, defined this fight. Hour 4. Most warriors were exhausted, some dead, others wounded. Kenji's body still functioned. He felt pain, but it was manageable. Every attack he launched was backed by a body that refused to quit. Every block succeeded because the muscles and grip were conditioned for endurance. Across the battlefield, he spotted Tiada. The old veteran nodded, recognizing the warrior who had learned the lesson Renjiro never did. Kenji's eyes scanned the field. Survival now was not a matter of luck or skill alone. It was the result of preparation, discipline, and the endurance built through relentless training. The truth crystallized. Skill wins the first hour. Conditioning wins all the hours after. Kenji had returned to battle, not as a student of technique alone, but as a warrior forged from both mind and body. 5 years later, Kenji ran the dojo. Yamada-sensei had retired, content that the school now taught truth instead of comfortable lies. A young student arrived, 16, eager and talented, reminding Kenji of Renjiro. "Master Kenji," he said, "I want to become the greatest swordsman in Japan." Kenji smiled, having heard it before. "Come," he said, leading the boy to the courtyard. Chi-ishi stones, Makiwara posts, Tetsubo staffs, and heavy rocks were laid out. The boy's eyes widened. "Master, I came to learn sword technique," he said. "These are your tools," Kenji replied. "Pick up that Chi-ishi. Show me 30 twists." The boy tried and failed at 23. "Do you know why?" Kenji asked. "Because your body isn't ready for battle. Weakness is temporary, but an untrained weakness that believes it is ready kills." Kenji gestured for the boy to join. "Let me tell you about Renjiro, the most talented student this dojo ever saw. Perfect technique, brilliant mind, dead at 23. Why? Because no one taught him this truth. Every warrior wants secret techniques, hidden knowledge." But Kenji shook his head. "There is no secret. Just brutal, unglamorous physical conditioning over months and years. That's what separates survivors from corpses." He handed the boy the Chi-ishi. "You will start here every morning and evening for at least 6 months. Your hands will bleed. Your muscles will scream. You will want to quit. And this will save your life. Or its absence will kill you, like it killed Renjiro. Choose which story you want to live." The boy bowed deeply and began 30 twists. When he failed, he rested for 1 minute, then tried again. Repeat until success. Kenji watched. Another student, another chance to teach what Renjiro never learned. The lesson was clear: forge the body first. Only then does technique truly matter. In real combat, the warrior who still stands beats the warrior with perfect form lying on the ground. Welcome to the forge. Welcome to the real warrior path. Harder, less elegant, more painful, but survival depends on it. The boy gripped the Chi-ishi, beginning the path where endurance, not skill alone, defines who lives and who dies. Kenji nodded. The cycle continues. Every twist, every strike, every lift teaches the same truth. Strength supports skill. Spirit commands the strength. Neglect any part, and death is certain. The young student began, and the dojo's legacy endured. The lesson of Renjiro lived on. Forge yourself completely, and only then can you truly wield your technique.